The message came through on all frequencies, in all languages, desperate and clear. Help us, please. They are coming. We cannot stop them. For 3 days, the signal repeated across Earth's communication networks. Scientists, military leaders, and government officials gathered in emergency meetings to discuss the unprecedented alien contact. The message originated from a distant star system, nearly 50 light-years away, yet the translation arrived perfectly in every human tongue. "It has to be a trick," General Clark insisted, pounding his fist on the conference table. "No alien civilization should know our languages this well." Dr. Walker, head of genolinguistics, shook her head. "The message contains embedded translation matrices. It's meant to be understood by any civilization capable of receiving it. This is a genuine distress call." In orbit above Earth, the battleship Terminus maintained its regular patrol. Captain James Reed watched the blue planet below, unaware that his life was about to change forever. His ship was Earth's newest military vessel, designed for deep space operations and armed with weapons that humanity had developed during their centuries of internal conflict. "Captain," his communications officer called. "Priority message from command." Reed straightened his uniform and moved to the main screen. The stern face of Admiral Wilson appeared. "Reed, you've heard about the alien signal?" the Admiral asked. "Yes, sir. The whole planet has. We've decided to respond. The Terminus will make first contact." Reed's heart skipped a beat. First contact. The words humanity had waited centuries to hear. "Why us, sir? We're a warship, not a diplomatic vessel." Admiral Wilson's expression darkened. "Because the message is a call for help against something that's killing them. If we're walking into danger, I want our best ship out there." 3 days later, the Terminus prepared to depart. Earth's governments had united in their decision to answer the call. This was humanity's chance to join whatever galactic community existed beyond their solar system. Reed addressed his crew of 400 from the bridge. "We don't know what we're facing. We don't know who sent the message, but we know they need help, and Earth has decided to provide it. This mission may be dangerous. It will certainly change human history forever." The Terminus engaged its experimental faster-than-light drive, disappearing from Earth's orbit in a flash of light that briefly outshone the sun. Weeks later, they arrived at the coordinates embedded in the message. A massive space station orbited a blue-green world. The station's design was elegant, with sweeping curves and transparent sections that revealed gardens within. It looked nothing like the utilitarian human ships. "We're being hailed," the communications officer reported. The main screen flickered to life, showing a slender creature with 4 arms and iridescent skin. Its large eyes widened visibly at the sight of the humans. You came," the alien said, its voice translated through the same matrix that had decoded their distress call. "We did not expect a response from your kind. I'm Captain James Reed of the Earth ship Terminus. We received your distress call." The alien's body trembled slightly. "I am Ambassador Lith of the Galactic Coalition. We sent our call to all corners of the galaxy, but never imagined." The alien paused, seeming to gather courage. "Never imagined that Deathworlders would answer." "Deathworlders?" Reed asked. "Your planet is classified as a death world in our records. Too dangerous to approach. Your gravity, atmosphere, pathogens, predators, and even your own species' aggression levels. They are all lethal by our standards." Reed exchanged glances with his officers. "Then why ask for our help?" Ambassador Lith's 4 hands clasped together in what seemed like a gesture of prayer. "Because what comes for us is worse than anything, even you. We call it the Void Swarm. It consumes everything in its path, and our weapons cannot stop it." The docking bay of the Coalition station was massive, designed to accommodate ships from hundreds of different worlds. The Terminus looked out of place among the sleek, colorful vessels, dark, angular, and bristling with weapons. Captain Reed led a small team onto the station. Ambassador Lith waited with a group of aliens, each more strange than the last. Some floated in the air, others stood on multiple legs, and one appeared to be made of living crystal. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Lith said, keeping a noticeable distance from the humans. "Please forgive our caution. Your biology is concerning to us." Reed nodded. "We understand. We come in peace and to offer help." The crystal being stepped forward, light dancing through its transparent body. "I am Elder Glint of the Council. Your ship, it is a weapon. It's a battleship," Reed answered honestly, "built for defense and combat." A wave of whispers passed through the alien delegation. One small creature with 6 eyes fainted, falling into the arms of its companions. Lith's voice trembled. "Your entire vessel is designed for war. We had heard rumors that Deathworlders built such things, but to see it. You asked for help against something that's killing your people," Reed said. "What did you expect? Perhaps scientists? Diplomats?" Glint's crystal form pulsed with light. "Not warriors." Reed looked around the beautiful station. Everything was designed for comfort and beauty. No defenses, no weapons. These people had never known war as humans understood it. "Take us to your command center," Reed said. "Show us what we're up against." The central chamber of Harmony Station contained a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Hundreds of green dots represented coalition worlds. A growing red mass was consuming one edge of their territory. The void swarm began at the edge of known space. Lith explained, "It is not intelligent as we understand it. It simply consumes." Reed studied the map. "How fast does it move?" "It has devoured 17 worlds in one cycle," Glint answered. "Billions dead. It leaves nothing behind." "And your defenses?" asked Lieutenant Adams, Reed's tactical officer. The aliens exchanged uncomfortable looks. "We have deterrent technology," Lith said carefully, "designed to discourage aggressive species. Nothing meant for war." Reed's expression hardened. "Show me footage of the swarm." The holographic display changed to show a planet surrounded by what looked like a living cloud. Billions of insect-like creatures, each the size of a small car, covered the world's surface. Plants, animals, even buildings dissolved under their touch. "The swarm consumes all organic matter and converts it to more of itself," Lith explained. "Our weapons barely slow it down." The humans watched in silence. Finally, Reed turned to the aliens. "We'll help you, but you need to understand something about humans. We come from a world where everything tries to kill us. The weather, the animals, even microscopic things you can't see. We survived by fighting. It's what we know." Lith's 4 arms moved in a complex gesture. "What are you saying, Captain?" "I'm saying our methods might shock you. We won't just try to stop this swarm. We'll destroy it." Several aliens backed away. One made a sound like water boiling. "You speak of extermination," Glint asked, light pulsing rapidly through its crystal form. "I speak of survival," Reed answered. "Yours and ours. Because if this swarm keeps growing, eventually it will find Earth too." The coalition representatives huddled together, speaking in voices too low for the translation matrix to catch. Finally, Lith approached Reed again. "We have no choice but to accept your offer, Captain. But please understand, violence is foreign to our nature. What you consider normal may be difficult for us to witness." Reed nodded. "I'll need all the data you have on the swarm. Biology, behavior patterns, weaknesses, everything." "And then?" Lith asked. "Then I call Earth. We're going to need more ships." As the humans left to return to their vessel, Elder Glint turned to Lith. "Have we made a terrible mistake? These creatures seem as dangerous as the swarm itself." Lith watched the humans depart, their heavy steps echoing down the corridor. "Perhaps, but the swarm gives us no choice. We must hope that these Deathworlders can save us, and that they will leave when their task is done." The laboratory aboard the terminus buzzed with activity. Dr. Eliza Morgan hunched over a microscope, studying samples of the void swarm provided by the Coalition. 3 days had passed since Captain Reed sent his report to Earth, and the response had been swift. Earth was sending reinforcements. 5 more battleships and a research vessel full of scientists specializing in biological weapons. Fascinating, Dr. Morgan muttered, adjusting the microscope. Their cellular structure is unlike anything I've seen before. Lieutenant Adams stood nearby, watching the scientist work. Can you find a weakness? Dr. Morgan looked up, her eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. Oh yes, everything has a weakness. These creatures are connected through a biological network, a hive mind of sorts, but their rapid growth has a cost. On the bridge, Captain Reed met with Ambassador Lith and Elder Glint. The holographic display showed the swarm's advance toward the Coalition core worlds. Your people need to evacuate these 3 systems immediately, Reed said, pointing to planets in the swarm's path. Lith's body trembled. That's 11 billion people. We don't have enough ships. Then we buy you time, Reed replied. He touched a control, and the display changed to show a battle plan. We'll establish a defensive line here. At the Cygnus Gap, it's a natural bottleneck. Elder Glint's crystalline form dimmed slightly. You intend to fight the swarm directly. Our weapons cannot harm them. Ours can, Reed said simply. And Dr. Morgan believes she's found a biological weakness we can exploit. As if on cue, Dr. Morgan entered the bridge, carrying a small container. Captain, I've developed a targeted pathogen. It attacks the swarm's unique biology while leaving other life forms untouched. She placed the container on the table. This is just a sample. We'll need to produce it in massive quantities. Ambassador Lith backed away from the container. You created a disease. Deliberately. It's a biological weapon, Morgan explained, designed specifically to combat the swarm. Elder Glint's voice took on a higher pitch. This is forbidden. Life should not be weaponized. Reed's expression hardened. The swarm is killing your people by the billions. Would you rather maintain your moral stance or survive? A tense silence filled the bridge. Finally, Lith spoke, voice barely above a whisper. How would this weapon be deployed? Dr. Morgan brought up a simulation on the display. We load it into missile warheads. On impact, the pathogen disperses in an aerosol cloud. It infects the swarm organisms, disrupting their cellular functions and preventing them from reproducing. The infected units will die within hours, she continued. More importantly, they'll spread the pathogen to others in the hive network. You're talking about killing trillions of living creatures, Glint said. Creatures that are eating your worlds, Adams countered. The discussion was interrupted by a communication officer. Captain, the Earth fleet has arrived. General Harris requests to speak with you. Within hours, the human reinforcements had assembled at the Cygnus Gap. 6 battleships formed a defensive line, while behind them, the research vessel began mass-producing Dr. Morgan's pathogen. Coalition representatives watched in horror and fascination as humans prepared for war with an efficiency that spoke of long practice. Weapons were checked, fighter craft were fueled, and missiles were loaded with the biological agent. The first wave of the swarm will reach us in 12 hours, General Harris announced during the final briefing. Our strategy is simple. Hold the line and deploy the pathogen. If Morgan's right, we'll see results within days. Ambassador Lith addressed the human commanders with formal gravity. The Coalition has existed for 3,000 years without weapons of war. Today we witness methods that challenge our deepest beliefs. But we have no choice. We thank you for your assistance, though your ways frighten us. Reed nodded respectfully. Sometimes survival requires doing the frightening thing, Ambassador. 3 days later, the first engagement with the swarm began. Human warships fired their missiles into the approaching biological cloud. The pathogen dispersed exactly as Dr. Morgan had predicted. For the first time in its existence, the void swarm retreated. The planet Helios spun slowly beneath a red sun. Once home to over 5 million Coalition citizens, Now it served as the front line in humanity's war against the Void Swarm. Coalition ships filled the skies, ferrying civilians to safety while the human fleet established a defensive perimeter around the evacuation zones. Lieutenant Marcus Rivera stood at the edge of the landing zone, watching the last transports load. His combat armor was scratched and dented from 3 weeks of fighting. Beside him, 50 human soldiers prepared their weapons and equipment. How many more to evacuate? Rivera asked the coalition coordinator, a tall insect-like being named Trill. 6,000, Trill replied, mandibles clicking nervously. But our sensors detect swarm activity approaching from the north. They have adapted to the pathogen faster than expected. Rivera nodded grimly. Dr. Morgan's biological weapon had worked brilliantly at first, but the swarm was evolving. Each new generation showed more resistance. We'll hold them off, Rivera said. Just get your people on those ships. Trill's compound eyes reflected the setting sun. You cannot stop them with so few soldiers. Rivera checked his rifle. We're not like you. We're used to fighting against bad odds. The radio crackled. Lieutenant, swarm units spotted 5 miles out and closing fast. Move into position, Rivera ordered his team. Remember, aim for the node clusters. They're still vulnerable there. The human soldiers spread out along the ridgeline overlooking the evacuation site. The planet's harsh environment, thin air, high gravity, and scorching heat had already claimed 2 lives among Rivera's team. But the remaining soldiers adapted, using the tough conditions to their advantage. They're coming, called Sergeant Cooper from her observation post. Thousands of them. Rivera lifted his binoculars. The horizon darkened as the swarm approached, a writhing mass of chitinous bodies flowing like a liquid across the rocky terrain. Hold until they reach the marked line, Rivera instructed. Then hit them with everything we've got. The first wave of the swarm crossed the invisible boundary. Rivera gave the signal, and the ridge erupted with weapons fire. Explosive rounds tore into the alien mass, each blast destroying dozens of creatures. But for every one that fell, 10 more emerged from behind. They're adapting to our attack pattern, Cooper shouted over the gunfire, changing formation. Rivera watched as the swarm split into 3 groups, one continuing the frontal assault while 2 others moved to flank the human position. They've never done that before, he muttered. They're learning. What do we do, Lieutenant? A young soldier asked, fear evident in his voice. Rivera studied the terrain. The planet's harsh surface worked in their favor. A series of deep ravines cut through the landscape to their left and right. Cooper, take your team to the east ravine. Jackson, west ravine. Set explosive charges. We'll funnel them through the center. The soldiers moved quickly, using the planet's high gravity to slide down into the ravines. Rivera's remaining forces intensified their fire on the central group, drawing the swarm's attention. The plan worked. The swarm concentrated its advance through the center, avoiding the ravines. When the flanking groups were in position, Rivera gave the signal. Twin explosions rocked the battlefield. Tons of rock crashed down, crushing hundreds of swarm units and blocking their advance through the ravines. The remaining forces focused all firepower on the central group. For 3 hours, they held the line. The evacuation ships filled and launched one by one. Rivera's forces took heavy casualties. 20 dead, 15 wounded. Last transport is away, Trill announced through the radio. All civilians evacuated. Rivera looked at his remaining forces, bloodied, exhausted but still fighting. Fall back to extraction point. Mission accomplished. As the human dropships descended to collect the survivors, Rivera took one last look at the battlefield. The swarm had stopped advancing, gathering its forces for another approach. They're retreating, Cooper said in disbelief. Rivera shook his head. Not retreating. Adapting. Next time, they'll be stronger. Aboard the coalition command ship, Ambassador Lith watched the human soldiers return. How many did you lose? He asked Rivera. 40% of my force, Rivera answered flatly. But we held the line. Lith's 4 arms performed a gesture of profound respect. We have never seen such sacrifice. Your people fight in ways we cannot understand. Rivera removed his damaged helmet. That's why you call us Ambassador. Because sometimes survival means doing the impossible. Dr. Morgan hadn't slept in 3 days. Her lab aboard the research vessel Pasteur had become her prison and salvation. Under the harsh lights, she studied the newest swarm samples, watching with growing concern as each test showed increased resistance to her original pathogen. They're adapting faster than any organism I've ever seen, she explained to Captain Reed during their emergency conference. The original strain is now only 30% effective. Reed's face showed the strain of weeks of constant battle. We can't keep fighting a defensive war. Every retreat costs us coalition worlds. General Harris nodded in agreement. His holographic image flickered slightly as it transmitted from his flagship. Intelligence has located what appears to be the main swarm breeding ground, a planet they've completely overtaken in the Vega sector. Morgan looked up from her data. If I could get fresh samples from the source, I might be able to develop a more effective weapon, something they haven't adapted to yet. Reed studied the star map. That's deep in swarm territory. We'd need a full battle group to reach it. Then that's what we'll use, Harris decided. Captain Reed, you'll lead the assault. The coalition will provide transportation and logistics support. Your mission is to get Dr. Morgan to the breeding world and back with her samples. Ambassador Lith, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke. My people will help, but we cannot fight. We have no warriors. We're not asking you to fight, Reed replied. Just get us there. We'll handle the rest. 3 days later, the largest fleet ever assembled in coalition history moved toward swarm territory. 6 human battleships formed the core, surrounded by hundreds of coalition transport and support vessels. The plan was simple but dangerous. Punch through the swarm's outer defenses, reach the breeding world, and deploy Dr. Morgan's team to collect samples before withdrawing. Reed stood on the bridge of the terminus, watching as the first swarm defenders appeared on sensors. All ships, battle positions, he ordered. Coalition vessels, fall back to safe distance. This is where we earn our keep. The human ships moved into formation, their weapon systems activating with practiced precision. The swarm responded by sending thousands of smaller units to surround the fleet. They've never coordinated like this before, Lieutenant Adams observed. They're evolving tactically. Then so will we, Reed responded. Execute pattern Delta. Target their largest concentrations. The human ships broke formation, each taking a different attack vector. Their weapons tore into the swarm, creating temporary gaps in the living wall of creatures. Main cannon charged, the weapons officer reported. Target their center mass and fire, Reed ordered. The terminus shuddered as its primary weapon discharged. A brilliant beam of energy cut through the swarm formation, vaporizing thousands of creatures instantly. The other human ships followed suit, their combined firepower carving a path forward. For 6 hours, the battle raged across space. 2 human ships were lost, their crews evacuating to coalition vessels as the swarm overwhelmed their defenses. But the strategy worked. They'd broke through to the breeding world. We're in position, Reed announced to Dr. Morgan's team. You have 1 hour on the surface. The science vessel descended through the atmosphere, protected by fighter escorts. Below, the planet's surface writhed with swarm activity. What had once been mountains and oceans was now a single massive organism, the swarm's hive. Dr. Morgan worked quickly, collecting samples from different regions. These are primary genesis nodes, she explained to her team. The source of all swarm units, if we can target these specifically. Suddenly, the ground beneath them erupted. Swarm units unlike any they'd seen before, larger, more armored, emerged from the surface. We've got company, shouted one of the security team. New swarm type. Get the samples to the ship. Morgan ordered as the guards formed a protective circle around her team. The retreat became chaotic. 2 scientists fell to the swarm despite the guards' best efforts. Morgan barely made it aboard with her precious samples as the creatures swarmed the landing zone. Back in orbit, Reed made the most difficult decision of his career: deploy the Nova bombs, target the main hive structures. Nuclear devices fell toward the planet's surface, detonating in sequence across the main swarm concentrations. The explosions were visible from space, bright flashes that momentarily outshone the system's sun. Did it work? Harris asked over the comm. Reed watched the sensor readings. We hurt them. Badly. But they're already regenerating. Dr. Morgan clutched her sample case. It's enough. I can work with this. As the fleet withdrew, Reed looked back at the wounded planet. For the first time, humanity had struck a significant blow against the swarm. But the cost had been high. Hundreds of human lives and 2 irreplaceable ships. We won't get another chance like this, he told Harris privately. Whatever Morgan develops has to work. We're running out of time and resources. The Situation Room aboard the Coalition flagship Silent Dawn had never been so crowded. Representatives from 17 species gathered around the central display, watching as the red mass representing the swarm pushed relentlessly toward their core worlds. Dr. Morgan's enhanced pathogen bought us 3 weeks, Captain Reed explained, his voice hollow with exhaustion. But the swarm has adapted again. Their newest generation shows complete immunity. Ambassador Lith's normally iridescent skin had dulled to a pale gray. Then we have lost. The Coalition has existed for 3,000 years. Now we face extinction. The room fell silent. 6 weeks of brutal fighting had cost humanity nearly 1/3 of its deployed forces. The Coalition had lost 11 worlds to the swarm, with billions dead or displaced. Each victory had been temporary, each defeat permanent. Not yet, Dr. Morgan said, stepping forward. Her lab coat was stained and wrinkled from days without rest. I've been studying the swarm's energy patterns. They're drawn to thermal radiation. It's how they find habitable worlds to consume. Reed looked up. We knew that already. Yes, but I've been thinking on a different scale. Morgan activated the display, showing a massive gas giant at the edge of Coalition space. This is Hyperion, a gas giant composed primarily of hydrogen and helium, the perfect fusion materials. Elder Glint's crystal form pulsed with confusion. What are you suggesting? Morgan took a deep breath. We convert Hyperion into a makeshift nova, a controlled fusion reaction that would release an enormous thermal pulse. The Coalition representatives murmured in shock. You want to destroy an entire planet? Lith asked, voice trembling. Not destroy. Ignite, Morgan corrected. The thermal pulse would act as bait, drawing the entire swarm to Hyperion. When enough of them gather, we detonate the planetary core, Reed finished, understanding dawning on his face, creating a star-level event that would wipe them out. The energy release would be equivalent to a small supernova, Morgan confirmed. Nothing within half a light-year would survive. The Coalition Council erupted in protest. Elder Glint's voice rose above the others. This is unthinkable. Hyperion's moons have research outposts. 3 nearby systems would be devastated by the radiation. We cannot commit such an act of destruction. Reed stepped forward, his patience worn thin by weeks of battle. The swarm will reach your homeworlds in 15 days. How many more billions will die while you cling to principles that the enemy doesn't share? General Harris, joining via hologram, nodded in agreement. Every conventional option has failed. The swarm adapts to everything we throw at it. This may be our only chance to end this. Ambassador Lith moved to the center of the room, silencing the arguments with a gesture. I have watched humans fight and die for people they never knew. Their methods disturb us, but their sacrifice is real. He turned to Elder Glint. We must consider Dr. Morgan's plan. For 6 hours, the debate raged. Coalition scientists analyzed Morgan's proposal, searching for alternatives. None were found. Dr. Morgan supervised from the terminus, checking calculations that would determine whether their desperate gamble succeeded or failed. "The hard part will be timing," she explained to Reed. "Someone needs to activate the catalyst manually after confirming the swarm is gathered. The radiation will make remote detonation impossible." Reed studied the mission parameters. A suicide mission. Whoever triggered the catalyst would have minutes at most to escape the initial blast wave. "I'll lead the trigger team," he said simply. Morgan looked up, startled. "Captain, the chances of survival are irrelevant," Reed finished. "This is our one shot. I won't ask anyone else to do it." As the preparations continued, the swarm seemed to sense the trap. Its advance toward coalition homeworlds slowed as units began moving toward Hyperion. "It's working," Morgan whispered, watching the sensor readings. "They're responding to the thermal bait." Reed gathered his volunteer crew, 15 men and women who understood they might not return. As they boarded the small, fast ship that would take them to Hyperion, Ambassador Lith approached. "Your willingness to sacrifice yourselves." The alien struggled for words. "We have no concept for this in our language." Reed smiled slightly. "We call it courage, Ambassador. It's what Deathworlders do." The small stealth vessel Firebreak approached Hyperion's swirling surface. Through the viewports, Captain Reed and his 14 volunteers watched as the massive gas giant loomed before them. Its atmosphere churned with violent storms larger than Earth itself. But it wasn't the planet that held their attention. The space around Hyperion swarmed with the enemy. Billions of swarm units had gathered, drawn by the thermal bait Dr. Morgan had designed. The plan was working perfectly. "Final approach," Lieutenant Adams announced from the pilot's seat. Her hands moved steadily across the controls despite the knowledge that this might be her last mission. "We'll reach insertion point in 5 minutes." Reed addressed his team. "Once we're in position, we'll have 30 minutes to plant the catalyst devices and retreat to safe distance." He paused, meeting each person's eyes. "If we're successful, the galaxy lives. If we fail, the swarm continues until nothing remains." No one needed to mention the slim chances of their own survival. They had all volunteered knowing the risks. The Firebreak dove into Hyperion's upper atmosphere, using the planet's storms as cover. Swarm units passed nearby, unaware of the tiny human ship in their midst. At precisely the calculated depth, the team deployed the primary catalyst, a device that would trigger a chain reaction in the planet's hydrogen core. "Primary catalyst deployed," reported the engineer. "Initializing warm-up sequence." Reed checked the timer. 25 minutes to get clear. "Let's move." As they turned to leave, disaster struck. A rogue storm front slammed into the Firebreak, damaging the main engine. The ship lurched sideways, alarms blaring throughout the cabin. "Engine 2 is down," Adams called out. "We're losing altitude." Reed moved to the engineering station. "Can we reach escape velocity on the remaining engine?" The engineer's face told him everything. "Not with all of us aboard, sir." Silence fell over the bridge. The mission parameters had just changed from dangerous to lethal. Reed made his decision instantly. Reduce crew to minimum. 5 stay, the rest evacuate in the emergency pods. Before anyone could protest, he continued, "That's an order. The pods have enough thrust to reach safe distance." After a brief, tense argument, 9 crew members entered the escape pods. Reed remained with Adams, the engineer, and 2 others. Their task now was simple: keep the ship functional long enough to ensure the catalyst activated properly. 10 minutes to ignition. The engineer reported as the last escape pod launched. Above them, the swarm noticed the small craft leaving Hyperion's atmosphere. Thousands of units broke off to investigate. "They're following the pods," Adams said, watching the sensor display. Reed opened the communication channel. "Coalition Command. This is Reed. Our position is compromised. Begin Operation Sunforge immediately." From safe distance, the Coalition and human fleets watched as the swarm unit swarmed around Hyperion, drawn by the increasing heat signature from the catalyst. 5 minutes to ignition, Dr. Morgan announced, her eyes fixed on the data stream from Reed's ship. The catalyst is stable. Ambassador Lith and Elder Glint stood silently nearby, watching as humans prepared to sacrifice themselves for a galaxy not their own. On the firebreak, Reed and his skeleton crew worked feverishly to keep the damaged ship airborne. 2 minutes, the engineer called. Reed opened the final communication channel. This is Captain James Reed to all ships. The catalyst is active and stable. Prepare for detonation. He paused, then added, "It has been my honor to serve with all of you, human and Coalition alike. Whatever happens next, remember that we stood together against extinction and won." 1 minute before detonation, the impossible happened. The firebreak's emergency systems routed enough power to the damaged engine for one final burst. "We have thrust," Adams shouted. Attempting emergency ascent, the small ship rocketed upward, fighting Hyperion's gravity with everything it had left. Behind them, the catalyst reached critical temperature. The gas giant's hydrogen core ignited. For an instant, a second sun blazed in the Coalition's sky. The energy wave expanded outward at nearly the speed of light, vaporizing everything in its path. 90% of the swarm died in that single moment. 3 days later, against all odds, a heavily damaged escape pod was recovered by a Coalition patrol ship. Inside, barely alive, were Captain Reed and Lieutenant Adams, the only survivors of the firebreak's crew. A month later, in the Grand Chamber of the Coalition Council, humans stood as honored guests. Ambassador Lith addressed the assembled representatives. "For 3,000 years, we believed violence had no place in civilized society. The swarm taught us that survival sometimes requires strength we did not possess." He turned to Captain Reed, now recovered from his injuries. "The humans showed us that courage means facing death not just for oneself, but for others, even those different from you." Elder Glint stepped forward, crystal form blazing with light. "Today, we formally invite humanity to join the Galactic Coalition, not as members, but as protectors, a role unique to your species." Reed, standing with Dr. Morgan and the other human representatives, bowed slightly. "Earth accepts this honor. We hope to learn from your wisdom as you have learned from our strength." Across Coalition space, memorials were built to honor the thousands of humans who had died fighting the swarm. On Earth, the news that humans were no longer alone in the universe, and had already saved that universe from destruction, changed society forever. The remaining swarm units were hunted down over the following years. Coalition worlds began establishing their own defense forces, guided by human advisors. And somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, Coalition scientists placed a special beacon, warning any who might listen about the deadly swarm and the even deadlier humans who had stopped it. As Reed often said in the years that followed, "The universe called us monsters and feared our world. Then it needed monsters to fight for it, and found friends instead."